WVWX.com. We have a special guest coming up on the line, but first, here's Ken.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Listening to Cam Bass Media here on WVOX 1460 AM. One big event that I want to mention coming up on May 1st on Saturday.
I'll let them know.
May 6th on a Saturday.
I'll let them know you're on.
Commissioning
I'm gonna put you through to
USS
them right now.
Cooperstown. That will be in New York City, the Westside
Okay, thank
Passenger Ship Terminal. And the Cooperstown is a littoral combat ship, about 350 feet long, and it is going to be named after the 70 members of the Baseball Hall of Fame who are veterans. So I think of Jackie Robinson, Yogi Berra, Ted Williams, some great names.
Okay, so you want to pick up the
And Tom
receiver.
Seaver, from the Mets.
I know.
And
I know, you gotta get used to that, 'cause you've been doing
70,
the
and also that's going to
receiver
be
thing for a long time. I know.
launched on, it will be commissioned on May 6th at the Westside Passenger Ship Terminal. We've been supporting the ceremony. And the great moment, they're expecting about 2,000 visitors, including the Secretary of the Navy, Del Toro, and is when the ship sponsor, who is often a woman for this, is introduced and gives the great remarks, the famed remarks, "Man our ship and bring her to life." And it's a very dramatic moment. Then the crew members who are standing on the pier run onto the ship. They don't walk, they run onto the ship, up the pier to man their positions. And they, the band plays and there's a lot of horns blowing from the ship. So it's a big moment. So we're just waiting for our guest to call in.
He's on the line right now.
Okay, we got him. Jack, did you have anything quick you wanted to do? Or are you good?
No, let's go right to our guest.
Okay. Thank you. And glad to have calling in with us from Dallas, Texas area, a 33-year veteran of the United States Navy, former Command Master Chief of the USS Harry Truman, and that is Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp. Ray, how are you today?
Motivated, prepared to serve. How you doing, Ken?
I know it. It's Motivated Monday.
That's right. Excellent.
Okay, we hit the dial, correct that. Hey, we wanted to appreciate your time today. There was a story, I thought of you immediately, that came out in the last week or so, that the U.S. Navy is going to rename one of its cruisers, the Chancellorsville, for an African-American Civil War naval hero. And the ship is being renamed the USS Robert Smalls. And he was a South Carolina native, lived from 1839 to 1915. And he served 5 terms in Congress and had a very distinguished career, a lot of leadership roles. What is your thought on the action the U.S. Navy took to rename the ship for an African-American Civil War naval hero?
Well, I think it's very appropriate that a naval ship is named after someone that had a direct impact on the Navy. And, the story of Robert Smalls and, his, going out to a ship, taking it basically, and then joining a fight is really, really a historic and interesting story. So I'm glad that was a choice that the Navy made in the naming. There has been a bit of a move, I'm sure you know, and your listeners know, when it comes down to folks that believe that we should change the name of all of the bases and other ships and things that are contrary to our current standard of living when it comes to treating people with dignity and respect. And so, though I have served in a strike group with the Chancellorsville, I never served on the ship, so I'm not per se, connected to the name. But knowing that that was the reason behind the name shift, I'm very glad the Navy chose to do that. And the Navy, and strangely enough, though the Navy was one of the last services to integrate, one of the last services to integrate fully when it comes down to bringing blacks into the service and other minorities, we're usually, I'd say in the last 15 years, leading the way when it comes down to speaking up for what is right in community actions, from George Floyd to some of the other, tragic events that we had going on in our community before that. So I'm glad to see and not surprised at all to see it happen.
Yeah, it's a neat story that Robert Smalls, who was a trained sailor and a pilot, commandeered the Confederate steamer Planter and sailed it out of Charleston Harbor, delivered it to the Union forces, got his family out too and others, and then eventually became the captain of this ship, the Planter, for a term during the Civil War. But then he went into leadership. He went into the South Carolina legislature in 1874, and then 5 terms elected to the House of Representatives. That's quite a distinguished career. He also was noted for civil rights actions in Philadelphia, gaining the right for African Americans to ride the transit system of the time.
Yeah, he's an amazing man, and unfortunately, I will admit that we really don't do a very good job of recognizing some of the amazing stories of those who have gone before us. Some of the typical stories, we hear some of, courageous actions, Pearl Harbor, courageous action during, one of the various different world wars, for sailors, accomplished. And names like Chester Nimitz, names like Dora Miller. I mean, those are names that are familiar, but there's many other stories of great folks. And so the naming of the ship will create a measure of history and learning for those in the Navy and those who see that ship and ask, what is it about that CT out there, that guided missile cruiser, and who is this Robert Small? So I'm glad.
Yeah, very good. Of course, the Navy has announced that the 4th of the new Ford-class carriers will be named for Doris Miller, a seaman who was a hero at Pearl Harbor, and we'll look forward to that ship joining the fleet. It's going to be a while till it's out there, but it's the 4th of the Ford carriers, which is a major commitment by the Navy.
Yeah.
Now, Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp, Jack and I were just talking a little bit about this terrible incident with the U.S. Air Force specialist in Massachusetts who leaked hundreds of pages of documents onto the internet, where it eventually went viral and picked up by adversaries and allies. And what was your thought on that one? You mentioned to me that you got a secret clearance for much of your career, and my father did. What was your thought about hearing about that incident?
It was very disappointing. One of the first things that happens, and I got my first top secret clearance probably 3 years into the Navy, and then maintained that for the rest of my career. So 30 plus years with the top secret clearance. And one thing that is imperative that people know through the indoctrination, you don't just get it, by the way. You have to go through an indoctrination process. And in that indoctrination process, when you gain access to that information, one of the first things that you are reminded and admonished is not to release, is the caretaking of the classified material. And so whether it be, no matter the type of media, in my day, it might have been a magnetic tape, like a cassette tape. In my day, it was also many documents that we still use today. But the caretaking of that information is the most important thing because of the impact it could have to the Navy and or to our government. And so I was very disappointed that someone was able to get into our systems and then pull that down just to kind of show off to their friends about the access to information. It was disheartening.
Absolutely. Now, one thing you mentioned to me is that you had a couple of occasions where you went to Finland to work with the military there, and Finland just joined NATO in the last 2 weeks, a major advancement for NATO, but it creates a 638-mile border with Russia. What were your thoughts about Finland, and what are some of the things they bring to the NATO alliance?
I was really, really happy to hear that. And you're right, a really good friend of mine is the Master Chief of the Navy there. In fact, when I read in the newspaper that they had been accepted into NATO, I sent him a note, and we had a great correspondence back and forth. Those folks in those Nordic countries have a high proficiency when it comes down to anti-submarine warfare. They have a high proficiency when it comes down to understanding the navigational challenges there in the polar cap and again in those Nordic areas. And so what they bring is a specialty in those waters that we just would not have because of their proximity and then their history in sailing those seas. And so great assets to have as part of the NATO alliance, and I'm looking forward to what they bring and opportunities that they bring to our Navy. Matter of fact, the last time I visited there, Ken, there was an airplane that was coming into proximity of that border, and I had the opportunity to see how strong their combat communication systems were, and so it was a great visit.
Very capable. Hey, you're a member of the American Battle Monument Commission, which manages the U.S. cemeteries for the military overseas. And you mentioned you've got a couple of stops you're going to make on a trip to visit American military cemeteries around Memorial Day. Tell us about that.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am was appointed by President Biden to the American Battle Monument Commission as a commissioner. And coming up for Memorial Day, normally we all get out. This year it's a 100-year celebration of the 100-year anniversary of the American Battle Monument Commission. And so this year we're all going out. My assignment is to go to Tunisia, Africa, and speak there on Memorial Day. And I'll be going by way of our overseas office, which is located in Paris. So I have a couple days in Paris, then I'll head down to the continent for maybe, I think it's 3 days there, and then back to the States. But it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to that trip. And in fact, I also have another stop in London before attending one more ceremony in Paris. So about 2 solid weeks of travel, along with the rest of our commissioners, fellow commissioners, they'll do the same thing.
Well, we had a chance to visit the American cemeteries in Italy at Florence and down by Anzio. And I also got a chance to visit the cemetery in England in Oxford. So so glad to talk with you. Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp, 33-year veteran of the U.S. Navy, now provider of a wonderful consulting company, Kemp Solutions.
Pleasure as always, Ken.
Okay, we'll talk again soon. Thanks for calling in. Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp.
You've been listening to Canvas Media on WVOX AM 1460 and heard around the world on WVOX.com. We thank today's special guest, Fleet Master Chief Ray Kemp of the United States Navy. Remember to check out our Facebook pages, Canvas Media, our Sea Services page, our Iona Basketball Report page, and our West Point Football Report page. And until next week, remember to thank a veteran.